CEO Les Moonves staying mum about sexual misconduct allegations during last night's CBS earnings call. But despite the silence, the swirling controversy could drastically impact the company's future. Joining us now, former NBC Executive Vice President and former TiVo CEO Tom Rogers, now Executive Chairman at WinView and a CNBC contributor. And our own Julia Boorstin is here as well. Julia, I'm going to start with you because I know you were on that call last night and pulling the headlines. Stocks down 1% despite an earnings beat and some upped guidance. I mean, is this really because they didn't answer any questions about these investigations?
Well, it really seems to be because of the uncertainty about two major issues that are really hanging over CBS stock. One is what's going to happen in terms of these allegations against CEO Les Moonves and the investigation that's underway, what sort of the outcome of that will be and what that could mean for CBS's leadership down the line. The second is the pending litigation with National Amusements and Sherry Redstone. National Amusements controls 80% of CBS voting shares, and there's this battle between National Amusements and CBS about whether or not, among other things, CBS should be pushed to recombine with Viacom. So a lot of questions out there. At the very beginning of the call, CBS's head of investor relations said they would not be talking about any of them on advice of counsel because of pending litigation. But if you look at the analyst notes out today, while they're enthusiastic about the company's growth, they still see that this uncertainty is problematic.
And Tom, we had this report from the LA Times that the board knew about some of these allegations months ago. You have a tweet from the Hollywood Reporter that another report from Ronan Farrow is due in the next couple of weeks. Is the board handling all of this the right way?
Well, the board got in there, Debevoise and Mary Jo White. That's the first-class white-collar investigative team. They're going to prepare a report, and part of that report is going to be what did the board know, when did they know it? And look, you can't expect the management team to comment on this. Of course, the lawyers told them to keep their mouth shut. I would have expected, quite frankly, for them to say something about something they were very free to talk about, and that is the attack on the press and their brand of news in particular, and total silence on that. I find that somewhat more disturbing because lawyers certainly didn't tell them to keep their mouth shut on that, and I think it deserved far more recognition than the silence that it got.
Julia, I know you reported this earlier today that most of the board is allied with Moonves, and that's also probably a key reason that he's been able to sort of pick this fight with controlling shareholder National Amusements. Are its directors conflicted?
Well, I think if you look at the breakdown of directors, there are three that are aligned with Sherry Redstone, and the rest are really have supported Les Moonves in his battle against National Amusements. So the company has come out with a number of announcements talking about how they're doing this investigation. Moonves won't be involved. It'll be managed by the board, and they have hired these two big law firms. But I think that there's going to be a lot of scrutiny and sort of a focus on making sure that the two law firms and their investigations are done independently and not influenced by the board.
Hey, Tom, you know, all of the commentary out of the sell side today has very little to add about leadership, as they put it, and uncertainty over leadership. But they'll go back to all access subs hitting 8 million in 19. The unbelievable upside, as Moonves put it, on sports betting. And we only got a few states online so far. I mean, how much can the street ignore some of these encouraging internals while this is going on?
Well, I don't think they're ignoring them. I think they're important things to point out because CBS has really positioned itself to outperform what a broadcast network facing the kind of headwinds that the traditional media industry is facing should perform. And Les deserves an enormous amount of credit for that positioning. When I was president of NBC Cable and retransmission consent became a thing because the must-carry rules no longer dictated that broadcast stations had to be carried by cable and set it up for a negotiation, CBS was in tatters. They had no way to deal with that. The other networks handled it much better. But Les has been able to drive a digital future and phenomenal growth in those negotiations with cable operators over the carriage of CBS. And really, ironically, CBS is better positioned here because it has fewer cable networks. What's going on is cable networks, and this is the issue with Viacom, are being dropped as cord cutting continues, and their only savior are these so-called skinny bundles, which have much fewer channels in them, and Viacom, for the most part, is not being picked up in that. CBS, by virtue of not having cable channels, is able to avoid that and instead be able to demonstrate growth on the not only the back of retransmission consent, but as you said, CBS All Access. And with the overhang here is a Viacom merger going to happen? I think CBS stock would be performing terrifically well with the less question there or not. If Viacom wasn't an overhang. Viacom at this point is a melting ice cube. You have the key kids networks, which are so much the value of that company, declining in ratings at 28% year over year. You have its cable channels being dropped and not picked up.
You're obviously not of the mind that Paramount is a gem that's being buffed a little bit here in recent months.
Well, I think there's a story there, but it's not going to overcome the massive amount of risk that exists in the core Viacom cable networks. And in there lies the issue of whether less is there or not, whether the lawsuit is won or not. Is National Amusements really going to be in a position to force a new independent committee to be organized and a new independent committee to come out in a way that, on a theory of scale, this is a good thing for CBS shareholders? Scale matters, of course, in this world, but at what cost? And there's a huge cost here in terms of the drag on CBS. And I think the risk to National Amusements of forcing that opens up such big liability. I'm still very dubious, no matter how these other issues turn out, that merger is going to come about.